There is an absolute nightmare happening in Tennessee right now when your starting quarterback is holding out, NFL style holding out for a bigger NIL deal. And folks, I know that's the SEC, but if you don't think something like this can happen in the ACC, you're being completely naive.
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Shout out to the everydayers, and thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this loaded episode, we will brace ourselves and each other for the chaos that's going to come in a few days when the transfer portal officially opens, and how equipped programs in the ACC are to thrive or not thrive in this new era. He is Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. I am Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. And to help us break down not only what's going on in Knoxville with Nico Iamaleava, oh, I struggled through that one, but how the rest of college football is going to be impacted by this. We've got the host of The Portal with us, Brian Smith, host of the Portal podcast and Locked On Seminoles. So, all right. So, Brian, starting quarterback of the Tennessee Volunteers, who, by the way, when he was coming out of high school, famously signed an unprecedented NIL deal at that time. They called him $8 million Nico, signed an $8 million over 3-year NIL deal. Allegedly, he sees some of the big $4 million per year deals that are being signed by some other quarterbacks, including Carson Beck of Miami, reportedly. And he wants a bigger deal at Tennessee. The Vols Collective does not want to give him a new deal and tear up the old one at this time for understandable reasons. It's been reported on for the last couple of days. Reports were denied by Nico's own father. But then on Friday, Nico reportedly skipped practice in Tennessee because he's holding out. So first of all, Brian, do I have the facts right on the situation?
From what little, I'm literally waiting on a text for more details from my Tennessee guy here. This has been trending in a bad direction since December. That's what I was told. What exactly was said then and all that, I'm not sure I want to know, because it's just going to make me angry on a Friday night, and I don't want to ruin my own weekend. I am old school. I believe when you sign a contract, therefore you should honor it. Secondarily, I know it would be a bad look and it's touchy, but Tennessee can hold him in contempt depending on how that contract, like this could go ugly in a lot of ways. Because if Tennessee wanted to, they could do that. But then again, you screw yourself with future recruits. And Tennessee's in a lose-lose, as they say. There's no good out of this. Go ahead, Ken. I know you feel the same, so go ahead.
I hate to be that guy. But allegedly, there is another side of this that Tennessee could be negotiating preemptively ahead of revenue sharing, and those negotiations aren't going well. That's the other side of it that's being reported from pro Nico camp. So I don't want to chastise the young man too bad, but I will tell you, Brian, you hit the nail on the head with that last statement. This is a lose-lose. Nobody wins. Nico loses. The university loses. The players as a whole lose out for this. And so do the universities, because this is a clear sign. We need guardrails for these types of things. If we're going to sign these contracts and all this, we knew holdouts were inevitable. That's part of what happens with labor when it's like, hey, I think I've outperformed my contract, which, by the way, if Nico is the highest paid quarterback in college football, I mean, you know, has he outperformed that? Some would argue no. So most would argue no, actually. So I would look at this and I would say, man, this is not only a harbinger of bad things for Tennessee, but again, high school players and all those big checks, that Bryce Underwood style deal, it may be Van Moose a thing of the past. For universities, it may be a thing where players are no longer wanting to sign that potential 2-year deal or whatever, because this is unheard of.
Go ahead, Dono.
Well, I was just going to say, I'm glad Kenton brought up the Nico side of it, because I don't want to sit here and just sound as if I'm slamming the young man. And I'm sure eventually we'll find out what's true, or at least what's more true. But you know, Brian, isn't this wasn't this the worst nightmare of every college football fan when people started to kind of run through like the worst case scenarios in your head? And listen, I just want to say for the record, for the 1,000th time, I am fully in support of players getting paid for their name, image, and likeness. I wanted this to happen for so many years before it finally happened a few years ago. But all the naysayers out there were like, no, keep it completely amateur. This is ridiculous. This is terrible. This was a lot of people's worst case scenario, to have kind of an NFL style contract holdout for college players. And there's still going to be people who refer to them as student athletes, which is such a joke because we move so far from that at this point. But like, isn't this scenario the worst nightmare, that your starting quarterback could potentially hold your team hostage?
Could you think of one worse? Like, honestly, you two follow football just as close as I do. Is quarterback's the most important position. He's the highest paid player on your roster, one of the highest paid players, if not the highest, in college football. But as Kenton hinted to, he didn't perform up to his contract yet. Here, Kenton, let me throw something at you. I just looked up on Pro Football Focus. You know what his rating was under duress last year? 45.2.
Oh.
Yeah. He had a 37% completion rate or something like that. I could pull up exact, but it's you get the hint here.
Yeah.
And he's renegotiating.
And
did y'all watch the Ohio State game?
And that's the confusing part about this, because regardless of which side kicked off the negotiations, or which side is being more unwilling to give, again, this is just a nightmare for everybody. And when you talk about, hey, your quarterback's the most important, he gets paid the most, all those types of things, we also have to consider an outlier will always be used to justify that which people already believe. Let's look at NIL overwhelmingly. Overwhelmingly, we have seen more schools failing their parts than the players. Overwhelmingly, we have seen multiple times. I don't talk about situations I don't have inside information or I don't know and trust the family. Michael Allen, former NC State running back, went out to UNLV. The UNLV quarterback said he didn't get what he was supposed to get paid. I know the Allen family. I'm not going to say I'm an insider with them and me and them have dinner and all that all the time. I know them well enough to know if he left a second time, there was something in the water there that wasn't exactly right. But this is the story that's going to be the headline grabber, because you're the big money guy. Nobody, with all due respect to Mr. Allen and his family, nobody is writing headlines about this outside of Las Vegas Times and whatnot. This Nico thing is going to be on First Take. It's going to be on Fox Sports. It's going to be every single place. So this will be the poster child when there are some serious restrictions slapped on this thing. And the timing of it couldn't be worse for athletes, with the house thing happening and there being proposals to say, oh, the max you can get paid is $600 per NIL deal. What worse timing could there be when you think about the national championship being a $20 million team and players had all the momentum in the steam, and then this happens? Hate it for them.
I don't know what else to say there besides the fact that, like, if you're not going to pay him, I'll go ahead and make the first point about this is a team sport, and I look at it from a fan side of this. Right now, barring something completely unforeseen, I see Tennessee's chances of making a run at the college football national title this next season. 0.
Wow.
Here's the problem. Even if Nico signs tomorrow and they figure it out, you've already alienated members of that locker room, the coaching staff, the boosters, the collective. And I can tell you personally, because I got friends that root for them and I got people from that area, they will not forgive.
Nope.
It is not going to end well for him all around with Tennessee. And that's probably in some capacity going to be negative for the win-loss column. Yeah. Prove me wrong. And I've met Nico, been around him. He's a lot of fun to be around, all that. And I don't know if he's the one driving it or if it's somebody in his family. I have no idea. But it's going to be him because he's the one throwing the pill. He's got a cannon. Holy cow, does he have an arm? But he's the one in the crosshairs. And especially, I don't know who Tennessee plays to, say, game 3, 4. Somewhere they play somebody pretty good. They play Syracuse to open up. They're not going to lose Syracuse. After that, though, if they lose a game, like they're an underdog and lose, it's one thing. But if they choke in a game, he's just going to he's going to take down his social media. It's going to be there.
there's nothing short of a national championship that could rectify this. Let's
That's
be
what I'm
very
saying.
honest. Even if he
100%.
goes to the playoff and does the same thing he did in the playoff last year,
Oh,
people
that
are
won't
going
work.
to. That's what I'm saying. People are going to be, tearing down the banners at Old Rocky Top to say, "Hey, what the hell is going on? You sat out and you charged us more, and this is what you do." But I'm very confused about this. From again, I give Nico the grace of I don't have all the information, so I'm not going to paint the 100% picture one way or the other. I don't know. But what I do know is this. If it is initiated from Nico's side, this is one of the most foolish things I've ever seen because normally you have leverage. You have something to say, give me what I want, or what's the or here? Or I don't play. You lose in that situation too.
Yeah.
You don't have enough good film to say, you know what? I could not play the rest of the season and I'll still be a top 10 pick. When one of the Bosa brothers hurt his stomach and sat out for the rest of the year, he had enough film to say, you know what? Do what you want. I'm good. I'm going to the NFL. They're going to make me a top pick regardless. Nico does not, he's not in that situation. So what's your leverage to say, hey, I'm going to go elsewhere? Well, what do you think they're going to pay you? You think they're going to pay you more than what? At this point in the ballgame, at this point in the portal, who would pay more? So that's why it's part of me that has to believe there's more at play than Nico won more money because it doesn't make sense. And granted, humans are illogical. Okay, so it could be that. It could be just a fool running a fool's errand, but I would hope better for him.
Well, coming up next, how many programs within the ACC have the financial firepower and also like the means of competence to avoid a situation like this? You want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and worrying and wondering if you're going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is Taxes. Get an expert now at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Thank you for making this episode of Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. For your next listen, make sure you check out the Portal podcast with Brian Smith, who's nice enough to join us today. It's portal season, guys, and that means you go crazy. Brian goes crazy. You listen to his episodes, and we all have a great time together. So, all right, Brian, again, I mentioned this. If this can happen in the SEC, it can happen in the ACC. Now, you outlined Tennessee's kind of in a no-win position here. But, if they do want to keep their starting quarterback happy, they probably have the financial means to do so. I mean, how many programs do you think in the ACC do? I mean, I did see Miami allegedly give a $4 million NIL deal to Carson Beck, so I guess they would be in that situation. I would assume Clemson and Florida State have pretty deep pockets, but I mean, how many schools in this conference can compete with that sort of financial firepower?
Well, I know that Kenton's least favorite school is the new NIL power in the ACC, allegedly, and I'll let Kenton speak on that because I'm not tied in to the triangle there in the middle of that state, but
Yeah.
there's no way you're going to get Bill Belichick to come without it because he's not going to go out and grind on he's not going to do that. So that's one we got to come back to. Louisville is the sleeping giant of the ACC because they got a lot of money.
Yeah.
And they've thrown it around to a certain degree because they can't get the high school kids they want, but their portal classes are pretty darn good. The other thing that you mentioned, Clemson and Florida State, it's not what you have, it's what you're willing to spend or able to now. You got to remember, Florida State, they got the renovations going on. There's no nice way to say this. The guy that is currently the head coach, Mike Norvell, would not be if his contract wasn't still $50 million plus that they owed him if they'd have fired him after last year. They're worried about if he stinks up again this next year, that tie, like NIL is tied into coaching contracts, whether they want to say it or not. Ask Florida, because the money they were going to use on Napier ended up going into recruiting NIL. They go back and forth. So, but if he fails again this year, it'll go back onto the new coach side. Everybody has to figure it out for themselves individually, and it could change year to year. But right now, I don't think Florida State has the money they want. And I really don't think that Clemson wants to spend it because it's a culture thing. They're just using, you give them a little credit. They went and got a couple of kids. That's fine. But they still would rather build in-house. That's their decision. But Clemson, that school's got cash. If they ever changed head coaches, I bet you Clemson would be one of the more dominant NIL teams. Donno is correct.
I am telling you all right now, Clemson would not end up in this type of situation because of the way that Dabo carries himself and the way that he is
100.
about NIL and all that. You tell him, hey, I'm going to sit out. No, you won't. You'll jump in the portal. Don't worry. Brian Smith will be talking about you about 3 p.m. tomorrow. Don't worry, brother. Go on. Go on. Go where you got to go.
I'm ready.
But in all seriousness, if we're saying what school has enough money to avoid this, I think we're looking at this from the wrong perspective. There is no amount of money that protects you and insulates you from this type of moment. Because if this were to happen, let's just say Cristobal recruits a quarterback, the baddest thing coming out of the state of Miami, right? Yes, I know Miami's a city, but y'all know what I mean when I reference the state of Miami. It's what Snellenberger and
the real ones know. The real ones know what you meant.
Let's say he says, I got the baddest thing. This man, he can throw the ball a country mile. He runs a 4.19. I'm telling you, he can shake up anybody out there shoot. That quarterback gets paid $4 million a year. That quarterback then says, wait a minute, some bozo at LSU is getting $6 million a year and he can't sling it like I sling it. Then what do you do? If that young man says, hey, I need more money, what do you do? I
tell him to take a hike.
And that's the thing, right? You tell him to take a hike, but that kid may actually be able to command more from elsewhere. So what do you do? Like I said, it's a lose-lose. And mind you, we're not even talking about the fact that young man was your starter all throughout the offseason. That young man, at this point in time, Nico and company have gotten in hundreds, at minimum hundreds, possibly thousands of reps of, let me see what your quick out looks like. Let me see what your bang eight looks like. Let me see what your skinny post looks like. Let me get in what that looks like. And now you're saying, oh, with 4 months left before the season starts, you either pay me more or get a new quarterback. What you going to do? What you going to do? Because I don't think that this is necessarily if you have enough money, you will avoid this. I think this is much more of a if you have a certain type of culture. And even with that, with all due respect to Clemson and Dabo and company, you have the right culture to keep kids for now. I don't think that that's a perma situation where it's like, hey, guys will never look around and say, well, wait a damn minute. Them boys at Georgia Tech all got Benzes. Why am I sitting up here pushing around this old beater? I'm just saying, I think there's a situation that if this becomes a ubiquitous type of deal, nobody's going to be safe, regardless of how much money you got in the coffers.
I don't disagree with that at all. And unfortunately, he brought up a really good point. It's specific to quarterback. It's the reps. If Nico had went all in on this and publicly so, in January, you got a chance to go through spring ball with a different quarterback. They're stock.
Yeah, that's right.
Quick, name the quarterback that is the number 2 at Tennessee.
Even locked on balls may not know.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't know. I have no
Touche. But the point is still the same. A lot of Tennessee people probably don't know, and he hasn't got enough reps. Yeah. They're going to fall off a cliff if he doesn't play next year and he's not focused on being involved.
Yeah.
I mean, Kenton's been in the locker room getting ready to go out there, go to work. You know what it's like if the guy next to you's not if he ain't dialed in, you're getting your head kicked in too because that lineman's coming over to you right after he knocks him down. Like it's a spiral effect, and you can read the body language of a quarterback. So in terms of the ACC teams, it's going to happen to somebody eventually. Now, I don't know if it's going to be somebody A, as talented as Nico, and B, like his contract. Like this is the perfect storm. And for it to be the first one we know about, like the chances of this scarcity were insanely low, but here we are.
Well, and here's what we have to talk about because, if they don't resolve this in Knoxville in the next few days, Nico might hit the transfer portal. Transfer portal is going to be open, and I've already seen players declaring their intentions to enter the portal. So I want to pick Brian Smith's brain on what the next 2.5 weeks are going to be like. You want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We're not done yet on Locked On ACC. And after you listen to Locked On ACC, make sure you also check out Kenton and my other shows. I host Locked On Canes, talking everything Miami. Miami's got their spring game coming up on Saturday, so we'll have a lot of content about that and recruiting. Kenton Gibbs hosts Locked On Wolfpack. He and Grayson Boone do a fantastic job. You know, they hired Will Wade, which I think was a great move as their new basketball coach heading into another football season, all the good stuff that comes with that. All right, so Brian, you know, the portal opens, I think on the fifth. Does it open on tax day? Does it open like as if there wasn't enough chaos on April 15th? That's also when the transfer portal opens.
April
But
16th.
the 16th, maybe. I might have been thinking of tax day. So 16th, so a day after, you know, everyone finishes their taxes. Shout out to TurboTax and the great folks there. We'll be covering the craziness of the portal on the 16th. There's already players around the country declaring their intentions to enter that portal. How crazy is this going to be, Brian? And do you think we're going to actually see starters at big time positions looking for new spots?
I'm going to start with your second part because that's the craziness of it.
Yeah.
In the spring window, there won't be as many guys as a general rule that are elite. However, Kenton, have you ever heard of the word tampering? Does that ring a bell to you, sir? You know what that means?
No. I'm not familiar with the act of messing with or talking to players illegally. I don't know anything about that. I have no clue. No.
Anyway, we all know that there are a handful of schools that think they got a shot to either A, make it to a bowl game, B, at least make it to the playoff, or C, make a run at the title. Any of those three, if you're missing, especially a DN, D tackle, quarterback, corner, or maybe like a big play receiver, those guys have no reason to jump in because, as Ohio State showed last year and Michigan the year before, the elite programs, they pony up. They pony up. So if you're going to get somebody in, it's not just tampering. You got to throw down. And let me give you an example of that. Xavier Hill has already announced he's going to go into portal. Now, that may not mean nothing to you, but if you've started at guard, both left and right tackle, been a two-time all-conference player, a 6'4", 320, and your PFF grades are elite, you're over 80 and everything, yep, you're going to get some offers. He played at Memphis, but he also started his career at LSU. Offensive tackles, they're not in the portal. He's a kid that's from the greater Memphis. Why not just ride it out and go in there? He's going to get drafted. Somebody's already said, hey, bro, just so you know, guaranteed. So the craziness is not whether guys are going to get in, it's why. Starters, there's no reason to leave. So if an elite player, and you're seeing this in college basketball right now, if an elite player at school X, especially if it's P4, hops in the portal, he got the phone call. Yeah. He probably got 50, but he probably got one that changed his mind on the money. And I'm going to guarantee you the following happens. Mark it down. Somebody's going to call out school X, Y, or Z. There are about 4 or 5 schools that everybody dislikes because of their portal tampering. A handful of them are going to get called out by coaches at other schools after this spring. And there's going to be a lot of people called for the spring window to get eliminated because of it, because a lot of guys are worried about losing their jobs too. That's the other little part. If they don't win and trying to steal somebody's players, it happens right after spring ball once you know where your depth chart is and you might be short. Well, that's on you. You get a reprieve every year and you just go steal somebody's player because you got money. It's going to be an ugly back and forth. That'll be the new thing within the next 2 months.
And you know, the funny thing about that is I had specifically talked about NC State needed more pass rush juice off the edge on Locked On Wolfpack multiple times. And going into the spring portal, guess what just happened? 2 new commits from Group of 5 schools, both edge rushers. Wow. I mean, you know, you're right, Brian. This is the game that's being played right now. This is how that goes. NC State is obviously a step up from G5. If you're talking lower P4, what's a step up from that? If you're a high G5, like Xavier Hill is, you know, what's a step up from that? You get that call, and at the end of the day, this is why I'm saying we need more guardrails and we need official established, hey, sign here, you do 2 years, or sign here, you know, you do 2 years with a potential renewal, whatever the case may be, so that we can, again, not even for, oh, we need players to stay at place X, Y, and Z, but more so because there has to be some type of guaranteed continuity. You know, there was something I saw this offseason, a phenomenon that was brand new to me. And Brian, maybe you've seen this as well. There were multiple players that committed to going back to their schools that made their post saying, hey, I'm back on with the One Husky NIL deal. And then 3 weeks later, they were in the portal. And it was like, well, what was that last announcement about? What's going on here? So, it's something that, again, I'm expecting guys to hop in the portal. But when you talk about elite high-level guys, Dono, the leverage for a lot of them just isn't there. Now, a guy like Hill, the leverage absolutely is there. You're in a G5 school. Memphis ain't touching some of these other schools' budgets, with all due respect. They're just not. Okay, cool. But if you're a starter at a LSU, if you're a starter at a Florida State, and you know you're going to get paid like a starter at Florida State, at Miami, what's the incentive to then say, well, let me go ahead and step out? Because, again, the grass ain't always greener.
Yeah, there's no chance a guy like, let's say, one of the guys like Maui Noah, guy at Miami, if he went in the portal, he'd get all kinds of money. He's getting paid well there anyway. Yeah. He's not going to enter the portal just because. Guys like that you have to entice them. And I know him. He's happy at Miami anyway. I'm not saying him, but just as an example, he's going to be a high draft pick. Zero chance that guy's getting the portal without being poached. Zero.
Right.
So I'm telling you, there's going to be some call outs coming. It's going to come, and it'll be great for us.
I'm here for it.
Oh, yeah. I have a short list. I'll discuss that after.
Can you give us a few from the short list?
There's a guy on this show that will probably find that very interesting. I'll just leave it at that.
Hey, all I'm saying is somebody's school on this show has been accused already. I
mean, how dare you talk about Dave Doran like that? I mean, how dare you?
Hey, the entire state of Wisconsin got beef with one of us, and it ain't me. It ain't me. The entire state of Wisconsin.
All right, that'll do it for our show. For real though, that will do it for the show. I appreciate Brian Smith for taking the time, host of the Portal Podcast and Locked On Seminoles. We didn't even talk any Florida State today. We'll have you back on again, Brian, to talk of it. They don't have a spring game, so what is there to talk about with Florida State anyway? Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. I am Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. Hope everyone has an awesome weekend. Make sure you smash that like button, subscribe, and let's all apologize to Dave Doran for accusing him of doing terrible, terrible things. It could never
be his number. I'll give him a call.
Could never be Mario Cristobal. We'll talk to you guys next time on another episode of Locked On ACC, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.